Hello, Leo. Welcome to your June 2023 astrology forecast. For those of you who are new here, my name is Jane. So as we make our way into June, as we can see here, the sun is well on its way in through Gemini and is going to make its way in late June into Cancer, which is going to activate your 12th house. But at the beginning of June, I think there's going to be a lot more energy, a lot more vitality, if you will. First of all, sun is in Gemini, so there's that. There's a lot of masculine energy at play. We have probably a little bit more movement in our lives. We're communicating, talking to people a little bit more, especially in your 11th house. There might be a little bit more social activity, which can be great for you. Even if it's just slightly more, it's still good. There could also be a real push in your creative endeavors, whatever those things may be, where you feel ready and you feel energized to put more investment into those things. Not to mention the first few days of June, we also have Mercury conjunct Uranus, as Mercury is starting to come out of his post-shadow phase from his retrograde that he had last month. And of course, we know that Mercury and Uranus both are electric, high energy planets. For you, this is happening in your 10th house, which might really be great for your work life, your career, and whatever ambitions you have for yourself. Of course, Uranus can bring really ingenious ideas. I think this is a time when, even though there might be a larger variety of options in front of you, the things that you are ultimately being pulled towards, I don't think they can really lead you wrong. So if you are contemplating a big decision right now, it might actually be a good time in the beginning of June to make a choice, choose something, go for it, see how it goes, explore, experiment. You can always change your mind later, but there could be a lot of a lot of opportunity that comes through making choices right now, okay? Not to mention, we also have Jupiter here in Taurus. Let's not forget that. That happened in the middle of May, so last month. And with this activation of your 10th house, there does seem to be a desire for Capricorn to expand itself in terms of the ways that it is contributing to humanity. And that might be through your work life, or it may be through some other means. A strong desire to increase your income, your financial life as well, is going to be quite prominent. Now, the biggest thing for Leo, though, with all of that being said, is actually Venus coming into your sign. We already have Mars here. So with Mars and Gemini, there's a real creative stimulation going on, a lot of inner child stuff coming through, an opportunity to be playful and whatnot. When Venus comes in on the 5th, this is just going to add to the importance of that playfulness in our lives. But as she continues on and makes her way through the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th week of June, we need to understand that she is in her pre-shadow phase. Okay, she will retrograde in July, and the pre-shadow phase is the period of time right before the retrograde. And I often feel this is a more potent time. So you are absolutely going to see Venus retrograde themes coming out. Because this is happening in your sign, Leo, and with the way I, have this set, this is your first house. Because this is happening in your first house, I would be really careful of extreme makeover type of stuff. Changing your hair color. If you're thinking of doing any kind of surgery, like a cosmetic surgery, this might not be the ideal time. Now, I'm not completely discouraging you. It's not that everything is going to go wrong. It's just, this is kind of the time when for me, oh, I'm going to go get bangs. And then you go get bangs and you're like, oh my gosh, I hate it so much. And then you have to sit and wait for it to grow out. If you're going to make a drastic change, the one thing I would suggest is make sure that there's an opportunity or an option for you to back out of it. For example, you cut bangs, well, it will grow out eventually. I would hate to see people doing really permanent things to themselves during this time. I would wait until after September, October, November would be a little bit better for you. Just a little note there. But because this is in your first house, we can also see that it will aspect your seventh house. So there will also be a lot of things with your relationships. Now, if you are single, this might not be as potent, or it may manifest in other types of relationships other than romantic. So business relationships, you with a client, you with a colleague, it could be a friend even, but probably someone that you have a somewhat committed situation with on a one-on-one level, okay? Even you versus an employer could be included in that. And it might be a time for you to revise something and to make changes in terms of the course that you are heading. It might be a good time for the two of you to recap and say, all right, well, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? How is this going? Where do we think we need to go from here? It's okay to sit down and have deep, meaningful conversations. As Mercury comes through Taurus, on the 11th, he's going to enter Gemini. So that'll be advantageous to communicate with other people. Mercury is in his sign of rulership. We've got the sun in there. So if there's any problem that needs a solution, this is definitely a problem-solving time. And if that problem exists within a personal relationship, that's even better. Okay, and because Leo is offering a little bit more of a playful tone to everything, I think this doesn't have to be so serious. Okay, it doesn't have to be so heavy and whatnot, but also Leo is going to offer that loyalty and that stability and that commitment quality as well. So people are safe right now to really express how they feel. They're safe to say, maybe I don't want that anymore. Maybe I want this, without it completely destroying your life. Sometimes when you approach someone and you say, hey, I don't really want to go in this direction anymore. I want to go in this direction. It can create all sorts of problems. I don't necessarily know that that's how it's going to happen this time. If you approach someone and say, I want to go in this direction instead, the Leo Gemini qualities are saying, okay, well, let's figure it out. Let's do it together. Let's, I'm loyal to you. I'm committed to you. I love you. Let's figure out a way to make this work. Because a Leo doesn't really want to let go, and a Jupiter in Taurus definitely doesn't want to let go either. Okay, the freedom that Jupiter is constantly reminding us is that we want freedom in all sorts of types of ways. The freedom in Taurus does not necessarily find freedom through detachment. Okay, this is not a real detaching kind of time. Okay, we usually wait for Aquarius, Capricorn, even Pisces transits for that to happen. But Jupiter in Taurus is like, well, I want to at least sustain where I'm safe. I want to sustain the things that are working and then establish freedom in some other ways, or build on top of what is already working. So no one seems to be really letting go. Although a Venus retrograde can bring stuff up. So I'm not saying it's issue free. It's definitely not issue free, but you can work through it. And with love and commitment, you can move on, and it can be great. Now, as we move to the latter part of June, we have a Saturn retrograde on the 17th. And then we have the sun coming into Cancer on the 21st. And then we have a Neptune retrograde on the 30th. So the retrogrades here in the 8th house in Pisces, plus the activation of Cancer, is going to be much more emotional. Okay, and because this is a time when Venus is actually starting to slow down a lot, if there is an interpersonal relationship, this is a time where probably the emotions surrounding everything is going to be a lot more prominent. All right. And even though Mercury comes through Gemini, he's going to move very quickly. And on the 26th, he's going to enter Cancer. So right after the activation of Cancer season, Mercury comes in. We've got Neptune slowing way down and retrograding on the 30th. So really that last week and a half of June, it's probably going to be a time where our emotions are at the forefront of everything that we're doing. We have to make sure that we feel good about it. We have to make sure we feel right about it. We have to make sure that we are feeling connected to it and that it feels inspiring to us. And we have to make sure that we are safe And again, Leo, I think, offers a lot of that sense of security. Leo and Taurus both. There's a lot of security in the astrology right now. Okay, this is not necessarily conducive to tons of destruction. Okay, this is more about building and building life and breathing life or new life into things. And even Cancer, maybe some fears come up, but it also says, well, it's better to express the fear and see what happens rather than repress the fear and see what happens. Okay, because if you repress the fear, you may not be operating in truth. Okay, there's a lot of truth that's probably going to come out. Venus sort of demands that. Venus demands truth because truth is the equilibrium. And we know she has a lot to do with balance and reaching that middle point. Truth is the only way to do that. So it's not so much about speaking your truth, which is really just your perspective, right? You can speak your perspective, but you can also be willing to listen to what someone else has to say as well. Also, with the activation of the 12th house, there is a quality of release and surrender. So this is going to be supportive of compromises that are needing to be made. As much as I would like to say that the Taurus, Jupiter, and all the Leo stuff, and even Pluto here, we'll talk about Pluto in just a second, in Aquarius with all the fixed energy in the chart can be really rigid. Well, we've got Gemini season, which is mutable. We'll have Mercury coming in through Gemini, and then we have cardinal Cancer. So there is a quality of rigidity, but only to an extent. Gemini is going to help us transition and make compromises accordingly. And then Cancer is going to help us to initiate and implement those solutions. Okay? Now, Pluto dips back into Capricorn on the 11th, which is the same day that Mercury comes into Gemini. Now, this dip into Capricorn, and I know, a couple months ago in March when Pluto came into Aquarius, it was like, hallelujah, finally Pluto is done. But I did try to make a point to say, remember guys, it's going to go back into Capricorn. So now here it is on the 11th, re-entering Capricorn for the first time. It's going to do this again next year when it retrogrades. Okay, Aquarius and Capricorn, it crosses over twice, which is a very strange ingress. It's really, really uncommon for that to happen. So we have a couple of years ahead of us to really put those final nails in the coffin and leave an old life behind. I do think Pluto dipping back into Capricorn is going to resurface some stuff as just that reminder that it takes time to fully move away. Sometimes we get really excited when a new energy is on the table. Pluto in Aquarius, very different from Pluto in Capricorn. We have more room to breathe in Aquarius. It's much more spacious in here. And sometimes we think we're out of the woods, and then boom, here he comes back into that more confined space of Capricorn, just to remind you, right, that maybe there are things to still work out. Maybe there's still healing that needs to be done. Maybe an issue, a past relationship, a trauma, whatever it was, maybe it still is impacting you in some way. Maybe you're not as free as you think you are. Now, that's not to be negative. It's just to, to keep it real. That's what Capricorn does. And Pluto in Capricorn is definitely going to keep it real, right? You're not as free as you think you are yet. But you will be, because that's where everything is going. And there's so much emphasis on the future right now, especially as Pluto comes in through Aries. It's been through Aries, now it's in Taurus. And even as it makes its way through Gemini and Cancer in the next couple of years, it's going to continue to be so much about the future. So if we keep our mind forward, then whatever from the past surfaces, it doesn't really have a strong likelihood of being able to get its hooks into us. And this is just a reminder of where we came from. And it's to help us understand that we are drifting further and further away, that growth is happening, the evolution is happening, and you are going to feel distant from whatever surfaces. right? It's kind of like when you are madly in love with someone and then you break up and you don't see them for like 10 years. And then you meet them 10 years later and you're like, wow, that person is certainly not the person that I made them up to be in my mind. It's a reality check. It's a reality check for how much you've grown. So it's a good thing that we're having this stuff come back. It's a good thing it's reactivating because it helps us to keep going. It helps us to keep our eyes forward. Okay? So it's overall a good month, I think. And just so long as you can communicate and to not be afraid and to know that there is no threat of massive destruction in your life, you're going to be golden. Okay? Thank you so much, Leo. You guys know I love you. Have a great month, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.